So Elden Ring Nightreign's beta has come out. People are playing it. I didn't to begin with. I had to sit there for 3 hours and I didn't get to play it, so I had to wake up at 3 o'clock in the fucking morning. Sorry, I'm a little traumatised from the lack of sleep, but we get on with it. The show must go on kind of shit, because in this playtest, I did actually manage to find out quite a lot of lore regarding Nightreign. Obviously, there's going to be bits and pieces that we don't know because, well, Nightreign fully hasn't released, and by proxy a lot of content has also not been released, so we can't really know the full story, but what we do have is a lot. It links into the Storm King, it links into Godfrey, it leads into spirits, the Ghostflame, and last but not least, it delves further into the cosmic horror elements that exist within Elden Ring. There's so much, and I can't wait to talk to you all about it. Before we get any further into the video, I just wanted to say, a goal of mine by the end of the year is to get to 20k. If you want to help this, and you do enjoy the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Without any further ado, daddling, please sit back, relax, grab some succulent, juicy, tender, and mouth-watering ambrosian prawns if you want, and enjoy as we delve into Nightreign. Now, I could do daddly, but let's get straight into this shizer. So, when is Nightreign set? Nightreign is set in a parallel universe to Elden Ring, where the shattering occurred differently. It seems like a lot is similar before the shattering. Now, of course, there are some differences, but they're similar enough that you can sort of use Elden Ring's base game to fit together some holes from before the shattering. There are a few factions inside of Elden Ring Nightreign, the first of which being the Nightfarers, the group that you belong to, a group of supposed varying backgrounds that operate inside of the Round Table Hold and venture out into Limvale. Currently, as of recording this video in the network test, there's 4 playable characters, but in the full release there will be 8. The next group you'll encounter is Godfrey's and the Hawks. Now you might be confused. Gecko, didn't Godfrey kind of kill their king? Well, in the base game, yes, you'd be right. Godfrey did kill the Storm King and, you know, he's responsible for that. But inside of Limvale, it seems like a different set of actions occurred. It's unclear whether or not Godfrey killed their king in this timeline and assumed the mantle of their lord, or he left them and spared them, and then they joined of their own accord. It's really up to the imagination, but regardless of how that happened, they are there, and they are grouped together, and there seems to be an alliance with those of the Round Table Hold. I only found this out because I was limited to the Round Table Hold in the first playtest session, but if you actually look, you'll see, side by side, paintings of Godfrey, Storm Knights and Hawks all together. They are everywhere, and they are really key to understanding this lore. This connection is further reinforced when you can actually play as one of these Hawk characters as a Nightfarer. One of their own is part of the Nightfarer ranks. That class's name is Guardian, which I think is very fitting considering you go into the lands of Limvale and you defend it from the Night Lord's forces, or more aptly put, Methylamine Pissrain, and the opening to the dimension of what looks like the Night Lord after every night. There seems to be a fracture though inside the group, considering we can actually fight against Godfrey's people, which also seem to be Marika's. It's a bit confusing as to what happened, but there was definitely a divide. For the 4th group, we've got these intelligent sorcerers that really we don't have a name for. It's really up to the imagination, considering we don't see much in the regards to Karian leadership inside of Limvale. Perhaps they're some sort of offshoot branch. And finally, some groups of exiled soldiers and banished knights which use the storm powers, which is really fitting with the kind of storytelling that exists within Nightreign. I don't think they're allied with the Hawks though, as they fight against the Nightfarers. There's also pictures of Radagon and the Erdtree around inside the Round Table Hold that kind of makes me wonder, was there some sort of divide with Radagon as well? Again, we don't have the full information yet. I'm sure in the full game we'll get all the answers to these questions. There is some definite tomfoolery going on here, and I think it all centres around Radagon. We know from Elden Ring's DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, that 2 halves, like Marika and Radagon, and like St. Trina and Mikla, can split apart. And I think exactly this happened inside of Nightreign. Let me explain. Right, so the final boss inside of Nightreign is Gladigus, this Night Lord guy. He is this dog which immediately set me back in time to the Red Wolf of Radagon. It looks kind of similar, not exactly the same. I mean, like, I had a funky dream last night, there was a boar. But getting back on topic, the way it moves, its attacks, is very similar to the Red Wolf of Radagon. Not to mention, it kind of looks the same, just with a black coat. Now, times it by 3. The connection to Radagon is proven even further when you actually look at its weapon. The sword it's attached to has these triangles attached to it. These chains, on first glance, might not look very important, but the pattern they're in is the same one we see in Radagon's Great Rune, which is on the Erd Tree in the form of impenetrable thorns, and when we actually see it on his statues, it's in the background. It's very synonymous with him. When you consider the fact that the moveset is very similar to that of the Red Wolf of Radagon. This is all without mentioning that in Farum Azula, in Malekith's boss room, you can actually see these 3 wolves surrounding this little figure. Now, originally I thought this was Marika, but considering it's so young, it's hard to tell. Paired with this, I think there's a big chance Radagon is somehow involved. Now, what exactly that role is, we can't really know because we're missing a lot of the puzzle pieces that will probably be given to us in the full release. What we do know, though, is that Radagon is not fighting on the same side as Marika. Godfrey's whole incentive was to be Marika's consort. Of course, he had his own goals, but first and foremost, he was Marika's consort, at least when he went by the name of Godfrey. And so when we see his soldiers with his insignia upon their tents, it leads me to believe that Marika and Godfrey are still allied, for why would Godfrey abandon her? After all, even the torture of his very own sons wasn't enough for him to leave her. So I'm very convinced that Godfrey and Marika are all still linked together, if Marika's even still alive, which brings the question of what happened with Marika and Radagon. We know that during the Shattering, Marika tried to destroy the Elden Ring and Radagon tried to repair it. In this timeline, in the original timeline, Radagon did not succeed. He did not succeed and the Elden Ring was shattered. In this timeline, it seems like none of that happened. For the tree that we can see, the great tree that we can see, bears a striking resemblance to the Skadu tree which can be seen in the Lands of Shadow, which was sealed away by Marika. Yet in Shadow of the Erd Tree, the Skadu tree is strangling around the original one, but inside of Nightreign, this great tree looks healthy. It is curling originally, but as the night progresses, so does the tree. This is something that blew me away when I first realised this. On day 1, the tree is floating in the sky. It's in its first form. On day 2, it's basically on the ground, and you can see a divine tower in the middle with 2 parts of the tree branching outwards. And then, on day 3, it blooms this sort of spirit goop which you can enter, and then you enter the inside of a divine tower. Only this divine tower bears a striking resemblance to the pathway to the Erd Tree, which makes sense considering the divine tower is in the middle of a great tree. Yet when you step outside of the entranceway, or the exit way, whichever way you want to go about it, you'll actually notice that you're no longer standing in Limvale. No, you're standing in a new realm entirely, one of spirits, and perhaps one that is closely related to outer gods. You know, we never actually see where Miquella went when he sort of transcended at the Divine Gate. He sort of just pissed off and then he pissed back when we arrived. I think there's a very high chance that this is where he went. It seems like there's another pocket dimension in this other dimension, for when we touch the door and we open it leading to Gladigus, the Night Beast, we're transported to a fiery realm that is very different to what we were just in. Further proof of the connection to the outer god actually lies in the fact Gladius uses gravity sorcery. This sorcery, which is heavily linked to the stars, where we know from the DLC and Elden Ring's base game, are most likely where the outer gods actually reside. So TLDR for that last minute, we basically transcend to the realm of God and then we kill a subordinate of God. When you load into one of these modes, it chooses Tricephalus, which to me suggests there's going to be multiple of these different modes you can choose from, suggesting that this Night Lord, Gladius, isn't the only Night Lord we'll encounter. You think we're done? Nowhere near close. Morgoth can be seen in the Fell Omen form in the second day. I find this really confusing, but also very intriguing. Morgoth constantly wants the reassurance from his parents. It's what he craves for. It's the reason he becomes the King of Lindale. It's to one day hopefully become a lord, even though he himself feels himself undeserving. Now, if Radagon is in fact in some way related to the Night Lord and their plots, Morgoth's appearance makes a hell of a lot of sense, considering Marika is Radagon and Radagon is Marika. To me, it seems really plausible that if Radagon gave Morgoth the right attention and he loved him, perhaps even like a son, that he would join his side due to the fact he's probably one of the only people to treat him with love. Which is really sad, but it is the sad truth, because he is an omen and that is the stigma that is related with his condition. You might be realising, Gecko, we've been talking for 10 minutes and we haven't even talked about the fact there's Dark Souls bosses inside of Elden Ring Nightreign. What the fuck does this mean for the lore? And it actually makes a lot more sense than you might think. In an interview back ages ago, before Elden Ring's release, George R.R. Martin said Elden Ring is a sequel to a game called Dark Souls. Now, everyone sort of thought that it was just because he was senile, but I think there's a lot more to it. Miyazaki might be the lead director on FromSoftware's games, but he isn't the only person there. There are a full team of people working on these stories. One of those team members just so happens to be the person that is heading the development of Nightreign, suggesting to me that he definitely knows about the lore and story of what Elden Ring means. I think it's quite likely that this idea of Nightreign has been the pipework for a really long time. Perhaps the reason why George R.R. Martin said that it was a sequel to Dark Souls was because we know that Nightreign, all the lore before the Shattering, is kinda similar, and considering George R.R. Martin wrote all the lore before the Shattering, perhaps he was asked to include Dark Souls into it. Because for all the jokes I just said calling him senile, George R.R. Martin is not stupid. He's a really intelligent guy who created multiple languages for A Song of Ice and Fire. Of course, this could be just a big coincidence, but I think there's quite a bit of evidence that suggests it wasn't. Right, so the question you might want to be asking now: how on earth are there Dark Souls and all sorts of characters from previous games inside of Nightreign? And the simple answer to that is arch trees. Now, if you don't know, inside of Dark Souls, arch trees are sort of representations of different worlds. You've got Ash Lake, which is a massive field of them. Each one of those trees is supposedly a different world, which, by the way, kind of similar sounding to the Great Trees. Especially considering in the network test we've just played, we do kind of enter one of these Great Trees and it does lead us to another world, wink wink. Something you might not have noticed was actually in the network test in the Roundtable Hold, if you go outside and look out at the ocean, you'll find these 3 tree stumps which look identical to the stumps of the arch trees we see in Dark Souls. The lore reason for why there is Dark Souls characters and all sorts of characters inside of Nightreign seems to be that all the arch trees were somehow destroyed and all the worlds converged into one, resulting in Limvale and the surrounding areas of Nightreign we haven't discovered yet. I'd love that they put an actual reason for why there are these Dark Souls characters inside of Nightreign. I think it ties it all together really nicely, and I know a lot of people were sort of skeptical for the lore, but I'm loving it. I now want to talk about the playable characters, because they've got lore of their own. Let me just say that. We've already been over the Guardian, so let's go on to the next one, the Duchess. Now, I find the Duchess really interesting because I think it's another example of one of these arch trees collapsing and ending up inside this realm. I think this mainly due to the fact we see the Dark Souls 3 Firekeeper mask upon her face when we actually play her at all times. She doesn't take it off. Perhaps in her own world, she was her own Firekeeper, but with the destruction and it sort of colliding with the lands between, I imagine she would have lost her purpose. The fact she fights is also really incredible, considering the Firekeepers, at least the ones in Dark Souls 3, don't have any eyes, and the mask covers their eyes to keep them in perpetual darkness. The fact she's such a dexterous character kind of reminds me of Melania, and the fact they're both blind and yet they're both such skilled swordsmen. Or daggerous woman in the case of Duchess. Now for the next 2, I'm actually going to talk about them together because they are linked. But first, I'm going to talk about the Recluse. If you see inside of Elden Ring, there's hardly any coloured people. This is most likely due to the fact that the climate of the lands between is more suited to paler skin. When you pair together the presence of melanin in the Recluse and the fact she's called the Recluse, it kind of makes me think she's a traveller from a faraway land that travels everywhere and is reclusive. No shit, Gecko, you fucking numpty. And on a surface level, it doesn't seem like there's much of a connection between the Recluse and the Wilder, but there is. Upon the Wilder's shield, there is this symbol. It's like this shuriken, only weird. And we actually see this same symbol on the ability of the Recluse. The Recluse's ability calls it the Soul Blood Song, but considering it's a spell, you can probably take away the song bit and it's called the Soul Blood. Soul Blood is not a thing at all inside of Elden Ring's base game, meaning it's a new faction we know nothing about. Yet considering this symbol pops up with the Recluse and her magic, and the fact this same symbol is on the shield of the Wilder that we know equally nothing about, it makes me think they're both from the same civilization. What that is, I really couldn't tell you, and I only hope that we get some more information inside the full release. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. I absolutely loved this network test. It was amazing beyond anything I could believe. I had to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning though to play it, which was painful as shit. But I played it for 3 hours and I absolutely loved it. If you're considering buying Nightreign, of course, if you're skeptical, wait until it's actually come out and the proper reviews all come out. But the network test has convinced me and I'm buying it because it's fucking awesome. Anyway, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Please friends, don't you dare go hollow. If you did enjoy the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. And yeah, may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.